everybody. It's the BoxCast podcast, and I'm Gary.
I'm Wade.
And I'm Josh.
Welcome back to the show. We're so excited to have you here in all of our various formats and fascinations across YouTube, Facebook. Man, I wonder if we could get on Instagram.
I hope so.
I hope one day they just let people stream their VR TMP. I don't know why they haven't yet.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I was just thinking more of my bikini, but
Oh.
maybe not today, folks. But we're not talking about that. Today we are discussing audio.
Yeah,
Yay.
the thing I know nothing about.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's very few things you know more than audio about,
And,
right?
and
Yeah,
to,
that might be
to
true.
preface this, Josh and I are definitely video guys.
Oh,
and
totally.
Gary is the audio guy, we like to say. But Gary is just smarter than us in general.
I'm a
so
nerd.
he's a nerd. He's very smart. And we are going to ask probably some... if you are an audio person, Josh and I are probably going to ask some really dumb questions.
Yeah, please ask dumb questions because that's how we get good answers.
Yeah.
Yes. If you're the kind of person that only knows I need to set the mic up and press record, but you're like, this still doesn't sound right, we're gonna go into it today, and we're gonna discuss the basics of getting better audio.
Yeah, and there's also on the BoxCast YouTube channel, we have the highest viewed video, I will say, is how to get better audio for your live stream, and that is some really good tools and tips and tricks. We'll review a few of those things here today, but I guess I'm just gonna kind of be quiet until you ask a question, and then I'll just I'll just kind of throw up nerd all over the table with audio. Is that okay?
Let's do
Yeah,
it.
I think I'll dive right in.
Yeah,
Because
hit
I
me.
think the biggest question I ever saw in support with audio is how do I prevent clipping? And for those who don't know what clipping is,
Oh
it's
wait,
pretty much...
I want to hear it. Give me an answer.
Okay, oh God. Let me give you my opinion of it, then Gary will
Are
give
you
you a
gonna
professional one.
actually clip or?
So,
No.
Oh,
No.
I thought he was actually gonna clip.
So,
and I was like,
if you see Josh, he's taking his headphones off because clipping is pretty much when the audio is too loud and it gets really distorted
Yeah.
and it sounds horrible.
Yeah.
And so in support, it would happen a lot. I feel like if you had your two examples, your church service and the band's playing and
Mhm.
it sounds horrible, but for the pastor, he sounds great because he's one person. It's
Well, yeah.
a little quieter. It's not a bunch of instruments playing and sounding bad. And for sports, you always hear it someone scores a touchdown and they're like, and Johnny's at the 10, the 5, shoot!
And that was a clip right there. We
should have warned me.
That was clipping.
that was
And
clipping.
Sorry, I
as-
just blew your
and
ears out.
And as enraged as I am at Wade right now, that's how your viewers feel about you.
Right, yeah. So the technical term, I mean, if we give you the watered down terminology, he was not expecting that. That was
I didn't
great.
know
That's
if it was
how
gonna
it
clip.
feels.
That was great. No,
Kevin's cleaning his ears out over there.
yeah, our producer today, Kevin's over here trying to make sure he still has hearing going on. But yeah, so I mean, in full, clipping is exactly that. You've reached a level that either the equipment or the settings are set to that you cannot go above, and so it produces this nasty, overdrawn, distorted sound that, quite honestly, sounds like it's cutting off, but you've reached a limit. So to water it down, really, what clipping is more so you're exceeding the maximum capacity of whatever you're doing. So if you're and we'll go into this a little bit more, but in the analog and digital world, there's two different sides to how clipping is viewed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So in your analog console world, most clipping occurs at +5, +10. Okay, which is above 0. All right. So if you ever look at an audio meter, or if you looked at your mixing console and you've seen the little scale that goes up.
That's what it says on the ATEM too. I think it goes to +10
+10
on the
right.
software. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it goes up, most analog consoles, +5, +10 is where your clipping will begin, and that's because it's an analog system. So you're losing stuff in the system. You're actually losing a little bit of that gain in the system. Where in a digital world, 0 is your absolute max. You don't want to breach 0. That's considered the top of the actual ceiling. You breach 0, you can create clipping. Now there are spaces and times where you can kind of work in that 0 realm where it's 0, +5, +3, somewhere in there. And you're not actually clipping anything. You're just producing more into the system, right? So you've reached a maximum limit and you can't get above it. And so it cuts it off. And it's terrible. And I'm sure you've heard it. So you asked me, how do you prevent clipping? Well, not yelling and screaming into your mic is one way.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone. My throat kind of hurts from that too.
Well-
Just screaming.
This is what happens when you don't pre-plan that.
I know.
You didn't do your vocal exercises for the morning.
I didn't plan that at all. So sorry, everyone.
So ways to prevent clipping are really pretty simple. It's producing a good gain structure. And when we say gain structure, that means everything down your line. So from your stage or your microphone, or the person who's using or speaking to your instruments to your sound PA system, whatever it is, whatever's coming into your sound system, you have a good structure, a lot of juice, a lot of actual signal coming in at a good level, right? It's not reaching or exceeding the clipping point.
Okay.
It's coming in. It's really good. All right, good amount.
So you're not bringing it up later.
No, you're not bringing it up later.
It's coming in at a
Yeah, it's coming in at a really good level.
Yeah.
It's got enough. It's got enough behind it, so that way this signal can carry through.
Okay.
And then as you go down the line into your audio equipment, such as your mixers, from that point forward, you're able to have enough juice to mix properly, so you can avoid clipping. Now, there's inside of that thing is called a headroom. Okay. And no, that's not where a short man walks into a tall room. And, okay.
I once saw
There's
you
also headroom for
draw
video.
all this. in a
Yeah, I
training,
did. I drawed it
and
out for
I
you.
kind of
once.
always remember that.
Yeah.
Like you drew this room with a person.
Right. It's a room with a person. So headroom is basically if you walk into a space and you are just short enough to walk in and you have your head touching top of a ceiling, you have no headroom. Right. So in the audio world, what it basically means is that if that signal, that person, if that signal were to grow, would you have space to get to the top? Right. A lot of reasonings for bad audio when it comes to not enough volume or too much volume is because there's either too much headroom, right, or there's too little.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So gain structure helps to build that out. Where if you gain everything properly down the line, so your mics, your instruments, your speakers, even your PA stuff, like you got a phone hooked up to a mixer console and you're playing music off of it, having a good enough gain structure coming in can help you alleviate having that headroom. So if that signal has to grow, like what you did when you screamed into the mic,
Yeah. We
Then
didn't
you
plan
cut
for
that guy's head off.
yeah, you exactly. We didn't have enough. We don't have
You
enough headroom
decapitated
built in
him.
for you to start, cheering like the Cleveland
Screaming.
Browns won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no headroom,
Right.
And because of that, that's how clipping occurs.
Can you also explain gain structure a little bit or gain
little more?
Because okay, and we had it on here for later, but like
No, that's fine. It works.
gain because like. I mean, I'm gonna speak for both of us, Josh, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. But gain, in my mind, is just higher volume, and I know that's not.
Some
right.
people think it's a laundry detergent.
So
but
it's like gain versus volume. Like, what's
people-
the difference?
yeah.
Or like, there's a gain knob on our mixer, and then there's the bar that goes up, and they both increase
Sure.
volume. But I don't know which one I should be using at the right time.
Yeah. So the way that I relate gain to volume is I use kind of like a plumbing scenario. To give you
Okay.
a good idea. Okay. So Josh, your house, right? You have public water here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the amount of water pressure that comes into your house, that's considered gain. And the amount of water pressure in your house is considered volume. Okay. And I'll explain. So gain is how much signal is coming into the system.
Like the mixer, for
No.
example?
Yeah. So coming into the mixer or coming in.
The
Yeah.
console, maybe?
so if I
Okay,
had
the
a
end
guit-
result?
Well, the end result's volume, but if I
Okay.
had a guitar,
Oh, okay.
and I was playing a guitar, as I play guitar, the signal coming into the system, that's the system,
Mhm.
that's the gain that has to be adjusted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in order to amplify that, I have to add gain to it in
Yeah.
order to amplify that signal so there's enough of it coming through. So that would be like the water pressure coming from the city into your house.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay?
Okay. Wow, this
Right?
is such a good analogy.
Yeah, I like this.
So volume is how much of that you're going to use and how much of it's going to be heard
to deliver it.
to deliver it.
Yeah.
Correct. So I have a guitar. I've added volume. I've added gain to it, right? I've amplified that signal. So I have plenty of pressure coming into my system.
Okay.
Now I'm going to use volume to control the mixing of that audio inside of the space that I'm in. So they're not
Okay.
actually hearing the gain, right? Because gain can be really high.
Yeah.
They're not hearing that gain, but they're hearing the volume that I'm controlling. So that would be like turning on water faucets in your house or using the hose,
Got it.
right? You're adjusting, you're managing, controlling how much water is being used in your house. The same thing is happening in your sound console. You're controlling how much of that gain is being utilized and how much of it is actually being heard versus not being heard.
Got it.
Jeez.
Whoa.
That's good to know.
Now,
Yeah.
is there a difference? This is probably too intensive a question, even for me. But is there a difference in like the way gain signals are versus volume? Like, is gain an electrical thing?
Yeah, so all signals are electrical,
Yeah.
right? All signals are electrical. So
But I mean, like, is the way like a gain would be structured.
you're
versus
basically
volume?
taking you're amplifying a gain. When you take gain and you turn the gain knob up, right? you're amplifying that electrical signal.
Ah, okay. Oh, that's good to know.
Okay.
Okay. So everything's electrical coming into the system. That's why you have some systems that require, or instruments or things that like microphones require what's known as phantom power. You have to send an electrical current to it so it can carry the signal back.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Okay.
good to know. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I always thought phantom power. I mean, I knew what it was. Like it powers a mic
Well, that's
or
what
an
it
instrument,
does.
but I didn't know it needed it to like also bring stuff
Right.
back.
Like
Yeah.
my acoustic guitar has a 9 volt that I put into it, so that way the system is powered, and then I don't have to have power coming to the guitar.
Cool.
So it's got power but built in. Microphone systems work in the same fashion, right? So if you have a wireless mic, we have batteries in the wireless mic not only to operate the mic, but that's what carries the signal
To push it.
push it out,
Got
and
it.
push it over the system, right?
So can I ask you something about gain structure that's relevant to us?
Sure.
Say a lot of times with a lot of jobs we do, we're just setting up maybe 2 or 3 wireless mics. Do we turn the gain up all the way up
No.
on those
No.
consoles?
No.
Where do we put the gain at so that it carries properly
Yeah, that's a
eventually
good
to
question.
the mixer?
That's a good question. This is gonna
And I mean on the wireless receiver rack.
Yeah, this is gonna
There's a
bump
gain
us. This
option.
is gonna bump us into analog versus digital, and
Mhm.
and I'm gonna put my fisticuffs and beat you up on this one
Oh, no.
because I know where you land.
I
and,
know.
and you're already declaring you're not an an audiophile. So,
Let's go.
but let's just take your analog system for example.
yeah.
Most analog systems are running +4 +6 natively. What's that mean? It means it's +4 +6. They're adding to it.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
You have to. If you look at the back of the wireless like unit for your microphone, there's usually a gain knob, right?
Yep.
Or there's a gain switch. So what that box is doing is like it's like -20, 0, +20 is usually what they operate on. And if what you're doing is you're telling it, okay, I want to cut 20 dB, okay, decibel. I want to cut 20 dB out, so I'm going to go -20. Oh, I need to add more gain to this box, so I'm going to add 20 by putting it to 0. Or I need more than that. I need a lot into this, so I'm going to add 20 more by putting it to +20. Okay? So that's how you set gain inside. And then a lot of other gain systems, higher versions, more elaborate setups with wireless, at least with wireless microphones, even have them built into the actual system themselves where you can control it 1 dB at a time
Mhm.
up to -20,
That's like our Shure
-40.
kit can do that.
Most
Yeah.
of the upper level Shure stuff has that ability.
Yeah.
But in like if you're using like our BLX systems, for example, from Shure, which I use at our church because they're really economical and they work well, there's only that -20, 0, +20. And I always set mine to 0 unless I have a really quiet singer or a really quiet speaker. And I'm kind of like analytical with it, so I'll adjust it on the console more than I will at the unit.
Okay.
But for like you guys, in an atmosphere where you're doing maybe a wedding or maybe you're doing some sort of
Conference or
conference or like a debate
speaker
or,
panel.
yeah, set it to 0. Okay, put it at 0 so you're not having so you're at the middle range, and then adjust the remaining gain.
something.
At the console
That's what I was
themselves.
about to ask you
Yeah.
next. Is like, what order should people work in to like go from? Should they go like set your microphone up, get that set? It sounds like in the middle or 0 or whatever your middle rating would be for that. Then work it on the board
Mhm.
and see where you're at from there.
All gain structure should be coming from the source to the console.
Got it.
Like for a digital system, for me, a digital system, I run it into a digital snake unit, which is like a big box that runs an Ethernet cable out to our console, and I can
Wow.
I can program those preamps to I think +48 or +60 depending on the console I'm using. So I can actually set the gain so I can amplify that signal coming into my console.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's pre-console. That's not even coming to the console. That's right at the snake box. So I can set those preamps to be +46, right? Or
Yeah.
+31 or whatever it may be, so I have enough juice coming into the console so then I can start mixing the volume to where it needs to be sent.
So
Boom. Now we know not to just start
not to
cranking
just
it up
turn it all the way up
on
the
the
mic
receiver.
and then turn gain all the way up on our board. So going back, and I guess just to wrap up, I don't think we wrapped up this question of how to
We haven't.
prevent clipping. But what would you because what we do, and again, I don't know if it's right. That's why we're asking. Is like, well, like for that touchdown thing, I would have someone like before we start the broadcast, I'm like, get pretty loud. Like we do this cycling class, and they like scream into their microphone because they're like, "Let's go!"
And you can hear it too,
and you
right?
can hear it really loud. So we're like, before we start recording, or streaming it or whatever we're gonna do that day, we're like, okay, do like half a song for us, and we want you to go ham and yell and give us some whoas and just craziness, right?
Yeah, that's good.
So we can get the loudest that you could be, and we can go down from there.
Right, exactly. So when you set up a gain structure, especially when you're trying to squelch out any type of higher level clipping or distortion, you on a digital console for my my friends who use digital systems, I usually gain all of my vocalists and anybody who's using a vocal mic between -15 and -10 on the scale. That's plenty of room for them to have a good amount of juice coming in. So that means if I have to turn their gain up, I've got Mary who's doing a great job being a vocalist, but she's a little quiet. So what I would have her do is I would have her give me her loudest. So I usually embarrass people making them sing "Mary Had a Little Lamb" or "Happy Birthday" or something. And I want them to sing it at their loudest volume. So it's like "Mary had a little lamb," right?
Yeah.
I want it pretty close to their microphone. That's another thing is mic placement makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So
we know it.
Just so you guys
with
know,
our man over here,
I get in trouble for that a lot.
Yeah,
after
so
every
mic
episode.
placement makes a huge difference. A lot of microphones, and again, this is getting really far into it, but a lot of microphones are like omnidirectional, right? Cardioid, and they have a certain pattern that they operate in. Like you can move your face over to this side, and the microphone can still pick you up just as well as it was in the front.
Yeah.
So mic placement is very critical to me. So like when I tell singers when they're singing, it's usually you take a knuckle, and it's usually about a knuckle away from your face. And if they choose to sing up higher, we lost our HDMI signal because his laptop died.
Yeah.
It just got.
If we're singing, right, and we're knuckle away, and they get loud, I advise my vocalists, like if it's a huge increase in their volume to sing, go ahead and pull that microphone away just a little bit. So that way it doesn't actually ring through quite as much.
Got it.
So it's a good example is like get them to get as loud as they would normally or exceedingly, and then you gain them in. So vocalists right around -12, -10.
Cool.
Well, and when I lav people up and I know that they can get pretty loud, I'll like scoot it down just a little bit.
Yeah, that helps. Yep.
Because they can, if you're always laving somebody up right here, but they're just way too loud.
It's well on top, but also there's a lot of issue being like legit right next to the neck.
Yeah,
because you're picking up more of the resonance there, but also like you can get a lot of muffling happening.
Well, and I've seen when you like lav someone up here, sometimes they can like bend down a little, and their neck will scrunch the mic, and you just lose audio automatically.
They
turn their head,
right. As you can probably hear in our mics, like as soon as I move my head away, all that audio leaves. Right?
I literally was going to give that example, and I was like, so when you do this, and you're like, oh crap, I have to be back close to this mic.
Get a bit closer.
I gotta be close.
So the rule of thumb that I like to use is I like to have somebody give me the thumbs up.
Yeah.
And I usually put it on their chin, and then I put the microphone just below.
That's a great tip because we have no science to that, and I'm going to start using that.
Wait,
give me a thumbs up.
Give me a thumbs up.
To the chin?
Put it right on your chin. Yeah, just right in the middle of your chin. And then you put the microphone right below it. Yeah.
Oh, Gary.
Whoa.
I'm going to use that tomorrow.
You didn't take anything else away from this.
Yes, the thumbs up trick.
Yeah, because middle of the chest area is a good area, and it's still kind of most lav mics are omni, so they'll need to move their head. Most people aren't moving their head to talk like this, right? Like they're not moving across their entire shoulder. They're usually just moving at like a 45.
Sure.
So right there, thumb up, right below.
Wow.
Okay, we have another really we're gonna battle about analog and digital later in like
dun, dun,
a
dun.
couple minutes. But we have to ask another thing that always trips me up because I know it, but I don't at all. So that's why I'm asking.
Wait, you know it, but
you
don't?
So I don't know this topic at all. This is why I'm asking.
What temperature do I like my steaks at? Is that the question?
I wish. Mono versus stereo. Because this is where this trips me up. And like I always remember at least a couple years ago, you see a converter on Amazon. Hey, you need XLR to headphone jack or like 1/8 inch, whatever you call it.
Sure.
You need XLR to headphone jack. Like there's a cable for that on Amazon.
Oh yeah, there's a cable for everything on Amazon.
So you think, there's a cable for everything on Amazon. So whatever you're trying to convert audio wise, you just assume, since they're selling it, it will work. And that is not true.
We found that out when we had Steven on, right?
Yes.
Like we found that out like we were putting
Yeah.
in the console, and I was like, oh, that's why we're using a stereo cable and it's in mono signal.
Mhm.
Yes, and so like when that comes to that stuff, and that just happened to me when I was filming a wedding. I was recording a program feed out of a Roland headphone jack, and the same thing happened. I was like, I'm not getting anything, and I just peeped it out a little bit, the 1/4-inch cable, and there was all my audio.
Yeah.
So hit me with it.
Okay.
What is mono versus stereo? I need a lesson.
So, okay, here's the lesson. You have 2 ears, right?
Yes.
That's stereo.
Okay.
Okay, really easy.
Good. I know that.
Mono, cover one of your ears.
Okay. Boom.
It's like, I
Cover.
should take my headphones off.
Yeah.
That's mono.
Okay.
Okay. So, but you covered the wrong ear, by the way.
Okay.
It's okay. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
The biggest difference between mono and stereo is left and right.
Yeah.
You hear all this stuff about multi-channel stereo, and it's like, well, okay, well, we're not gonna get into it. Real stereo is left right.
Yeah.
Real stereo is a left signal and a right signal, and then typically within stereo systems, there's a lot of what they call panning happening. So they'll put a little bit of something into the left and a little bit of something else into the right. So you get a kind of like this sweeping effect across the entire plane of left and right, right?
Mhm.
So when it comes to like mono signals versus stereo signals, typically any console that you're operating in is going to be mono dependent.
What does that mean?
Okay.
It means it's going to only run one single channel.
Oh, okay.
So one,
Got it.
it's going to run one signal type. It's not going to run, not cable type, mind you, okay, but one signal type. And it's usually one signal and it's left. So like if you were running, okay, you're rolling. That's the situation.
Yeah.
Your input would have been a stereo input,
Yeah.
right? So you could connect to a stereo input using a cable,
Got it.
right? But the signal that was coming to that input was mono.
Was mono. Yeah.
So that's why when you pulled the cable out, you only hit the top ring of that sleeve of that audio jack,
Right.
which is the left signal.
Got it.
So that's why you're able to get all your audio.
Yeah.
So what happens is a lot of people don't understand the concepts between like, well, I'm running a mono system into a stereo unit. This cable should convert it. Some cables do. Some cables will automatically take a mono and they duplicate that mono signal to make it left right. That means if you try to pan something left, it doesn't pan. If you try to pan something right, you lose it.
Got it.
Okay?
Okay.
Because it's one side.
Because one side.
It's one
Yeah.
side. So like the headphone units that you guys are using right now, okay? Can you pull that, just pick it up and just show it to the camera?
Oh, like this whole thing?
Yep. I'll give you an example. So this is a Behringer P2. It is a personal in-ear monitoring amplifying system. The cool thing about these is like they can do mono and stereo.
Okay.
So you're using stereo headphones,
Mhm.
right? So that has a stereo jack, which means that the cable, if you can pull the cable, you won't hear me very much
Yeah.
anymore. But the cable has 2 inputs on it. Or I'm sorry, has 2 sleeve rings on it, right? So you see the 2 black rings. So the
Yes,
top
it
is
does.
left, the bottom is right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Top is left. Bottom
Top is
right.
left, bottom is right.
Cool.
So when you plug that in, this is a stereo output on that system, and it's running into it. Now, if you pull the other cable out of the bottom, this is a 1/4-inch cable coming from our sound console. That is also a stereo cable.
Because it's got the 2 rings.
Right.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. We're only running single audio out of that. There's only one channel coming out of that
Oh. Why is that?
because that's all we're doing.
Oh, that's all we're doing. Okay.
We're not running 2 audio signals requiring 2 cables. We're running one.
Oh, got it.
So
Okay.
what's happening here is that this system is picking up, that little amplifier is picking up the left-only channel, and that amplifier is then doubling the signal left-right into your ears.
Oh, okay. That's why. Okay. Is that what an amplifier does?
No, an amplifier
It
amplifies
just
the signal.
amplifies the signal, right? Okay.
Right.
But it just happens to also be doing that.
But what it's doing is it's duplicating the audio from your left side into your right side, so it sounds stereo.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
Interesting. I think I learned something. I'll call you when I have questions.
Just call
But for the live streaming audience, like what happens when it gets into a video switcher and then goes out over HDMI into an encoder?
Yeah, that's a good question. So HDMI, obviously, you're embedding the audio natively, right? Because
Yeah.
HDMI embeds audio signal. So you can still embed left only.
Okay.
The issue is like, how do you fix it? So if you're running into like a video switcher, like if let's say you're using an A10 Mini, if you listen to our last episode, we talked about some of our favorite pieces of equipment, you
Sure.
know, hardware.
Yeah,
Swiss
like
Army
that
knife
only
stuff.
has eighth
Yeah.
inch in, right?
It has 1/8 inch in or headphone jack
Headphone jack
ins,
in,
right?
yeah.
Mic 1, mic 2. You would assume that each one of those are mono. They're not. They're actually stereo. So you can run a cable, say from your console, channels 1 and 2, stereo out. Okay, so you would run one mono left and one mono right into a cable that would combine them into a stereo signal, and you can plug it into the A10 Mini, and the A10 Mini will pick up both left and right audio
In one of the jacks.
in one of the jacks.
Okay.
Right.
So so let's say our use case, we would go 2 XLRs out,
Mm-hmm.
and they would convert to what to get into headphone?
To just convert each signal into a single whatever. So if you're going into 1/4 inch, they make a 1/4 inch converter that takes in 2 XLR converters as a Y cable.
Got it.
And then an output into
Okay.
1/4 inch. Or if you're taking it an 1/8 inch, slap an 1/8 inch adapter on it, right?
So you just have to pay attention to the cable specs to make sure it.
You have to pay attention to what signal you're running, and then how are you going to convert that down?
And aren't there these like little boxes too that do it for you?
Yes.
That where you can like plug 2 things in, and it's like, okay, here's RCA, here's
box.
headphone,
Yep.
here's
Yeah, we actually have one down here too that we use. It's an audio interface, right?
Cool.
But again, you have to remember a lot of audio interfaces, everything is mono input.
Got it.
Okay, like if you're running like say a Behringer Wing, for example, there's stereo inputs on those bad boys.
Okay.
So, which is awesome because that means any signal you put in, if it's a stereo signal, that input will automatically pick up a stereo input, even though it's one input, one jack.
I see.
Okay. Like my X32 does not do that.
So if you don't send that a stereo signal, you're only getting the left channel.
Exactly. You got it. It's only
Okay.
mono.
Okay.
Okay.
We're figuring this
What's
out.
going on?
Little bit by little.
What is
Little
going
by
on?
little.
Let me give you a benefit for those who are trying to figure out how to do this for live streaming. So in live streaming, stereo audio is always better, right? Because you don't want to like have somebody listen to your audio and then all they hear is the left side of the speaker.
Yep.
And a lot of times people have that phased, which means they flipped it so the left is actually right.
Oh, yeah.
And so all you hear is in the right channel, right? And that happens all the time. The best thing that I can tell people who maybe will listen to this, watch this, or go online and try to figure this out for themselves, is that if you want stereo audio, you have to send stereo audio. Okay.
Yeah.
You
can't change it after the fact.
If you're sending one mono cable out of your console or your audio device, you're sending one signal line cable out. You need to convert that and duplicate it to stereo in order for it to be stereo.
Got it.
It's not a true stereo,
right?
Mind you, it's just a duplication.
This is probably going to make anyone who is really into audio and also Gary probably like pull their hairs out when I say this. Sometimes when we have to, and it just applies, we're not doing it today, because it doesn't apply, we take our one mono XLR signal out, and we have a little thing that converts to 2 XLR signals.
A Y cable.
And we plug it into our ATEM, and sometimes it's like, hey, we have to do that because we're running the other one to a speaker.
Yeah,
and that's just taking the rest of it.
But see, that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
And in a perfect world, you would run 2 stereo cables out to whatever you're using, like even to your ATEM.
Yeah.
But and even to like our BoxCaster, right? You'd still run stereo out or stereo RCA. If you're using the Pro, you would we have combo jacks on there, so you'd run channel 1, channel 2, left and right. So, and that's okay. And it's all right for churches that only run a mono system at their church and can only push a mono signal out. It's okay to put a Y cable and split that signal into a duplication. That's okay.
It's probably different with music than it is too with just talking head stuff and
there's a lot things
like that, right?
Yeah, but you've listened to a lot of music where they have like these sweeping synth effects, right?
Yeah,
that go across from left to right, and it sounds pretty cool. Like
it's fun to listen to.
One of my dad's favorite bands, Styx, they would do that kind of all the time. Like you'd hear the synth go, and it would sweep from left to right.
Yeah.
And so that's just the way it is. So in that world, in a musical sense, sure, stereo makes more sense because you pan stuff left, pan stuff right. You get more of an effect. It sounds better when it's balanced in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
But in a world where you're like at a house of worship, for example, stereo is not always necessary. Like a mono signal running to 2 speakers running the same mono signal, you don't always need to pan left, right.
Okay.
Good to know.
All right. I'm going to ask the next question.
You're killing it, Gary.
I would say Gary always educates us on audio, and I love it. I'm going to ask the next question. Now, I don't really know what I'm about to say with this, but I'm going to say it. And I know we talked about it a little bit the last episode, and we were kind of joking around with it. But we have on here using a DAW versus RAW for system for consoles.
Yeah.
So DAW versus RAW.
Yeah, so DAW is a digital audio workstation, and RAW is just pretty much a raw signal, whatever you're pumping out of your console.
Got it. Okay. So give us some examples of like a digital audio workstation.
Logic Pro, GarageBand, Cubase.
So, and from my understanding, it's like you go out of your console into those,
Mhm.
and then you're able to tweak the signal a little bit to your
Exactly.
liking, and then go out to your live stream or your recording,
Exactly.
or record
Yeah.
something.
That's
yeah.
what a DAW is.
That's what a DAW does a lot more than that. A DAW brings in digital signals, and then you can manipulate those signals. A lot of times they use it for recording, and then you can just go back, play back the recording, make your edits or adjustments, and then
Oh,
export
I see.
that file out somehow or send it somewhere you need to.
I see.
There's a DAW system called Ableton, and I'm sure a lot of our House of Worship folks will know what this is. If you don't, just take a look at Ableton's website. It is a multifaceted approach to using digital audio.
Okay.
So you apply effects, you apply EQ adjustments, you can apply templates, you can add feathering to some of the audio, you can change gain structures. It's basically a digital workstation, but it does a lot more outside of that for audio recording as well as audio generation.
Got it.
And then you could add in synthesizer effects on top of stuff. So if you had a keyboard that needed to be synthesized, you can add a synthesizer to it, and it would do it for you.
Nice.
Okay.
How do people? I think I know the answer, but I'll just hear what you'd recommend. How do people get their signals from their audio mixer into their computers to like?
Yeah, there's a couple of
Yeah.
there's a couple of different ways. You could use Dante. So Dante,
Your good
No, you
friend,
can't. He
yeah,
doesn't
my good
work
friend
that hard.
Dante,
Just
sitting
get
at
him-
our sound booth,
Get him more
He's
Chipotle, and
lazy.
he's fine.
eating his Chipotle with no socks on, right?
Yeah.
So Dante is a really easy function where you're running digital audio like you would from a digital snake into a digital console, okay, with a single RJ45 Ethernet cable, and you're running Dante into, say, Ableton through your laptop,
Got it.
okay,
Okay.
or a computer of any sort. The cool thing about Dante is that it's fast. There's almost no latency,
That's
Oh,
cool.
nice.
right?
I didn't
Which is
even
what
think
makes it
about
great for
latency.
live
Jesus.
stuff.
Yeah, analog audio can add a great amount of latency. Digital audio, you can control that amount of latency. But the cool thing about running into Dante is that you're copying what your signals are sending, so you're not running multiple lines. Think about it, guys. Like you have a 16-piece band up there, right? You're
Yeah.
running 6 drum mics. You're running 2 overheads. You've got 4 vocalists right there alone. Okay, that's 12. Okay. And then so you have a guitar, 2 guitars, a piano, and a guest speaker. Right? I mean 16 inputs. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Now imagine having to take those 16 inputs and then copying those. So why splitting them out to another console?
Oh, geez.
Oh.
You're
That's how you have to do it with analog audios. You have to split those signals.
You're
That's a
breaking my
mess.
brain.
Right.
Yeah.
With digital consoles, you don't do that.
You're right.
You
Digital
create
consoles is one single line.
separate mixes in the console.
You can do that, but you get an Ethernet line that's a digital line, and it sends all those channels in, and then you can Dante or send all those channels out with one cable.
Okay.
Nice.
So it's like doing NDI when we talked to Steven.
Yeah, that makes
okay,
sense.
so it's like the NDI version
Right.
of
So you send
audio.
that audio
Got it.
out into a DAW, such as Ableton or Logic, and then you can take that signal, put it into the channel, set up your programming inside of your DAW, and it will record the audio for you.
That's
a lot
cool.
of times it'll even apply the audio and then send that out to wherever you want it to go. So, for example, in our church, we've experimented with Ableton and Logic a lot. We've recorded just naturally recording them in via. We actually used USB instead of Dante, and you can do that with Ableton as well. But we brought in all the audio over USB. We mixed it in for a broadcast mix
Mm-hmm.
inside of Logic, and then we sent that out over the headphone jack into the BoxCaster.
Wow. Okay.
Cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So,
So DAW versus RAW, like that's the reason the question was asked.
right.
It's personal preference.
Right.
I've done it both ways. I think the less, how do I say this? The fewer, we'll say it that way. The fewer amount of things that you have in your lineup for getting your audio to your live stream, the better. Okay.
Yes, that would say that definitely makes sense for like almost anything live
Mhm.
streaming related. Like I remember talking to people, video or audio, and they're like, "Yeah, we have this thing that then plugs into a converter, that plugs into a splitter, which plugs into another converter,
Yeah.
and then it actually goes through a speaker, and then it comes back out, goes into the switcher, through our fourth converter, and then it goes to the box." And they're like, "What's wrong with the box?" And you're like, what about the 7 converters you have before the box?
Right, yeah.
Like, just take your box and plug it right into the main source, and usually it's fine.
Right, exactly. And that's because each time you add an insertion point, every time you add an insertion point into that, you're adding something to it. Like you're adding delay. 'Cause it's got to process that signal and send it, right? Or maybe you're adding a gain point. So when we say gain point, remember the gain structure thing we talked about? Maybe that's got its own audio
it does
adjustments.
something else to the audio automatically.
Maybe it has an amplifier built in where it builds the So now you're adding a gain point. So now that's another point of audio, incursion that you're gonna have to fix.
I noticed that too. Whenever we add things to add things to the workflow, there's always different volume involved. Like because there's all these things that we'll implement where it changes the level. Where if you go straight from microphone to mixer, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. That's why it's always important to remember that, especially in this question, like I prefer running raw because I think I mix it differently. And like in a digital console space, I can mix it. I can see it. I can operate it. I like it better. It's more physical to me. I run raw. So I'll mix everything in our digital console and then I send that out 1 cable or 2 in this case because we want to rerun a BoxCaster Pro. But I send that out from my X32 into the BoxCaster Pro. It's already pre-done. It's mixed. I don't have to worry about it. Where some people like our other friends like Churchfront with Jake Goslin, he advocates for using Ableton, right?
Yeah.
And using Ableton in that regard. And then so sending your mix to Ableton and letting Ableton run the patches and all of the extra EQs and effects and synths and all that stuff, and then sending that out to your broadcast mix, which is fine, and you can do that. There's just an extra step involved. There's an extra gain point involved, right?
There's more software to learn.
A little more software to learn, and it's more fun.
I'm sure it is.
Well, I'm sure it's more custom, and you get the exact, sound that you want.
Yeah, and you can still do that with like a digital console running it out direct. You can still do that. There may be some more limitations, and we can get down the whole line called DSP. It's like digital processing power. Right.
Next podcast. No,
next podcast. 2 years from now, guys.
Yeah.
But like, some systems just don't have enough DSP to do that, and other systems do. So.
Well, I think we have I have 2 more questions for Gary. But I know we kind of wrote some of these down beforehand. We're gonna get into a big one here, which there might be some fists thrown across the table.
I'm leaving.
But yeah, because I know Josh feels strongly about one and Gary feels strongly about the other. But I did not know there were things as such, or I did not know there was something called a digital console until I pretty much met Gary. And Gary brought it, and I was like, "What's this iPad?" And you're like, "Yeah, this is how I control everything." I'm like, "That's pretty cool." But
I've always seen it in bigger church environments, but I never defined it. I was like, "These are all just mixers,"
because they're all just
they all
have
are
mixers.
Yeah, to
plug
us
stuff into them.
Right. To us video
That's
guys, they're just mixers. And we always have used analog mixers, and we even bought a new analog mixer that we're waiting for, and we showed it to Gary, and he's like, "Why didn't you just go digital?" And we're like, "We don't know, Gary. We don't even know the benefits of digital."
I'm going to force you to send that thing back.
And we haven't even got it yet, so we might. So explain to us digital versus analog mixers, maybe the benefits of digital for people who, and if you don't know what we're talking about, I'm gonna let you explain.
Okay. So in the analog world, analog was king for a long time because hardwiring sending signals was very complicated. Like splitting those signals off was very complicated. But in an analog world, they didn't have a digital system that would run. Like, I mean, if you're talking like 1980, 1990s, or almost closer to, to when the CDs released, because CDs were actually digital audio, analog was king. And so analog was bringing in a signal over a hard wire, plugging it into a hard physical connection, and taking that hard physical connection and running it to another hard physical connection.
Right.
Right. And so there was a lot of things that were added into that. So analog offers a very high noise floor, for example, where noise floor being the level where you begin to hear the audio and where you don't hear the audio.
Oh, I see.
Okay. But that noise floor, that's also the realm where that electric signal lives in. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you raise the gain on something and that noise floor has to come up, you're also going to hear the electrical signal that's behind it.
Is that like
that buzzing sound?
That's exactly it. That hiss.
Oh yeah,
I hate that.
Yep. I hate that too. That's why, the noise floor on that regard That's the noise floor. That's what you're hearing is
Yeah.
that digital signal behind it. And so a lot of people think that analog, and I do too, but they think analog systems bring in warmth into something, into a mix. And they really do. They add a
It's
little.
kind of like when people talk about records, listening
exactly,
to records
yes.
versus listening to CDs, and they're like, no, but it's scratchy and
warmer.
warm and-
It's got the tonal changes.
Yeah.
Like, and especially if you're listening to like an LP on an actual, record, and you throw it up on your record player and you're listening to it, it's the vibration of that analog change that,
Oh, I
that
see.
adds that warmth, that adds that
Yeah.
scratchiness, that
People
feel.
say that about sorry, this is a total tangent, but people also say that about film and
It's the same
and
process.
movies shot on film
Yep.
versus movies shot on digital, and like I know you can recreate it, but it's so interesting that that's a common thread among all those three things.
Well, and there is, but the biggest thing with audio on the analog side is the simple fact that analog consoles are cheaper. Okay,
they are a lot cheaper.
and a lot of people are more familiar with them. If you look at an analog console, and I'm sure we can put this up here.
Yeah.
In an analog world, every channel has everything there for you to change.
it's right in front of you.
It's right in front of you. In a digital console, the digital system, memory is a big thing with it. So it memorizes your settings as you go across.
Yeah.
So I don't have to have as much room. Everything can be condensed down into a smaller unit. And I can still operate the same amount of faders, the same amount of channels and outputs, and the same amount of sends and returns with a smaller unit.
Yeah. that
Yeah, I
makes
think the
sense.
one thing I'm really jealous of in the digital world, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, but you can create scenes, right?
Mhm.
And like when we come do this podcast, Gary comes back and he doesn't need to recheck our mics or anything. He's just like, all right, this is the podcast one, and we're good to
Think
go.
I put
Do
it up.
you EQ our voices too?
Yeah, I do that all through the console. Yeah. So, and I can see that's called real time analysis. So I can see what's known as RTA. I can see the RTA of you. I can see the frequency adjusting. So
But you changed the EQ of each of our voices.
inside of the
This is
console.
a very meta conversation. I
yeah,
know.
right. We just
Yeah.
jumped from audio. So let's jump back into the analog digital portion of that,
Sure.
right? So with an analog world, usually analog requires more hardware to run other things. Like you have to send and return effects because some analog consoles just don't have robust enough effects, like delay or
Okay.
chorus or reverbs. So you have to run the signal out into an actual effects graphic EQ and then run that back into the console for output.
Ugh, that sounds like a pain.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's why churches, houses of worship, or schools, all these things, like their PA systems are like huge rack mount units that sit on the side of their building in
Yeah.
the room, and they've got everything running. And it's also a really difficult way to go in and fix something if there's a problem. Like if that whole digital EQ went out,
Yeah.
you got to replace the whole unit, right? And the
Yeah.
whole system. So the benefit of having a digital console is you can bake in that analog sound if you really wanted to, but it has the digital processing behind it. And you're not running as many devices
Mhm.
and wires, right? Again, you run that Ethernet cable into the console from the digital snake, you can do that. You also have processing power that operates for all or any effects that you want to run, and it's all built into the console. So you can run studio level grade effects on an X32, for an example, that you would normally be able to pull out from a hardware effects unit on an analog console. You can run that digitally in the system, and it
Got
does it
it.
for you.
Jeez.
So, I mean, the benefit for us to go to digital would be if we start doing gigs where we're routing sound out back into the building, going other places. The thing I like about analog is we're always at the end of the chain. I know. We're always just like we're always taking it in, adjusting gains, and pretty much making sure the levels of 2, 3, 4 sources all match.
Sure.
And then we're just passing it to the viewer. But I could see why if you're creating separate mixes, like for a live
Mhm.
stream, and
Scenes
then you're
work really
creating
well. Yep.
you're creating a mix for the
especially
building.
if it was staying all in the same spot.
Yeah,
all the time.
exactly.
There are benefits to having an analog console. Like in your guys' setup, being small business owners, videographers, going out and doing weddings, conferences,
Yeah.
speaking engagements, whatever. An analog console would make sense. It's a little bit easier to set up, a little portable. You
Yeah.
plug it in, you make your spine adjustments, you send it out. It's fine. That's great. The issue that I have with you guys running analog for what you're doing is that if you're doing something consistently, like this podcast,
Yeah.
You're not going to get that same feature set with an analog console.
That's true.
You're also not getting clean audio either.
What is
It's
it?
dirty.
It is dirty.
Ooh.
Remember that noise floor?
Dirty audio.
Yeah.
Oh, because of the noise floor.
It's very hard to control.
Yeah, and I think
I have noticed.
and I think to your
that.
point, Gary, I
You
just
see that more.
love that when it takes you like no time to like figure out like if our levels are good and stuff like that. You just plug everything in, you get everything hooked up, and you're just like, all right, let's do some audio tests. We talk for like 10 seconds. You're like, yeah, you're still good.
Yeah, but
and, like,
he's
if-
a better audio guy. Though.
Yeah, but
that's
if-
not because of the equipment.
No. But if the
Well, but the equipment helps me.
but the equipment helps him.
I'm sure they go hand in hand.
And if we had the analog mixers, like some things would probably have changed, and you'd have to like readjust knobs and kind of redial it in. Versus, I'm just gonna go
dialing in on a
podcasting.
digital console, and you make a great point there. Dialing in on a digital console is a little bit easier because you get a physical representation. You can see it visually what's
Yeah.
happening in real time.
Yeah,
yeah,
There's
all
al-
you can see on an analog console is like a levels bar,
Exactly.
yeah. And sometimes that's like
a pseudo
barely
digital.
working, and for whatever reason, our output is like loud, and we're like, all right, well, the
Well,
output's loud.
Case
So,
in point,
Yeah.
when you guys came down, what was it, a few weeks, a month ago,
yeah,
a month or two ago, you guys came down and you filmed our church
yeah,
for a project that we were doing with one of our partners.
yeah,
And you filmed in that. And the biggest issue we had is that we were sending audio
yeah. We shouldn't have did that.
over
Into the
into your
analog console.
analog console. And when we turned up the gain to get enough volume to hear ourselves or hear what was going on, what did we hear?
noise.
We
Little
heard a lot
noise.
of noise.
We took it out, and then we went mic to digital recorder, and we were fine.
You were fine.
Which is how I've been doing things now. I just don't even bring the mixer. I
And
just-
Zoom makes a digital console that's really small, by the
Yeah.
way. They
Oh,
make
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
really good digital
not
console.
Zoom, the
do
web
they?
conferencing.
Yes, they
Zoom,
do.
Zoom recorders.
It's like Zoom recorders.
So-
yeah,
Tell me
yeah,
what
yeah.
it is
Yeah.
right now.
I don't know if our
He's
wide
gonna
shot
put-
will.
He's
work
going to
for
put it
this.
in the cart.
I'm gonna-
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll put it up on the screen.
So this would be
Let's buy this.
excuse me, this would be a version of a digital console that still offers some of the feel
Oh yeah,
of an analog console.
this looks nice.
Yeah, I like that. I still see knobs and stuff.
But this also has like Zoom makes a really good option because you can record directly to this through via SD card and all that jazz.
Yeah, that's what
You
we
can
need.
record to. Oh,
And
that's
it
the only
has
reason we
outputs.
bought the Onyx.
And look at it, has 4 headphone
combo
outs.
jacks, like it's combo
Yeah.
jacks. So those and it's 6
Oh.
combo jacks, which is perfect because you can
That's
run
perfect
quarter
for
inch
us.
and XLR.
Let's buy this.
Yeah, we might.
Put in the cart. Hey, could you
Cancel
put
the
your
other
could
order.
you put your credit card number up in here
We
too?
might.
or-
What's on the back? Anything good? No
What's-
RCA though. Sorry, Gary. We don't need it. We don't need
Oh,
RCA.
No RCA.
All right.
Well, you'll just buy one of those cheap Amazon cables you were talking about.
Oh, we have those.
Yeah,
Oh, and it can
so
run on
this
battery.
also-
it
does
can
run
run
on
on
batteries, too,
battery.
yeah.
We would never try to do that. That'd be scary. But that does
I
look
would.
really nice.
Oh,
So this is a
this
good
is
idea for if you're
brilliant.
like really needing to run into a digital system, and you
Or
want to
if-
do it at an entry level. Actually, you know what?
At
Go
a
to,
good entry level.
go
I
to
think.
Sweetwater real quick. So this is what we use for the podcast.
Oh, this is what we're using now. See, I don't
No,
even know
what?
because I'm a
we
dumb
don't. We
video
don't look
right
under
there.
the table.
the
We just.
X18, 18, the
649?
second one.
Yep.
Yep, that one.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and
That's
it has
actually not very
RCA.
expensive.
No, I'm just-
and
I'm
you
just
control
messing
this
around.
on your iPad.
That's I control on the iPad, correct?
Oh,
or my
I see.
laptop if I'm running the
I
software.
see.
So this has a Wi-Fi built in that will allow you to connect directly to the unit itself. So it generates its own Wi-Fi. You can connect it to a network, and then I'll route it into an IP, like a static IP, and then you can connect on any wireless network to this directly. It's
Look
it's
at
a,
the back of it.
that's the top, by the way. There's the back has all of the the in-ear, the auxiliary
Yeah.
outs and all that, the monitors and stuff
Right.
through quarter inch. So this is why I prefer digital, is because a lot of digital consoles are running into this system where they're a portable
see.
unit,
Yeah.
right? They can do multiple things, multiple ways. They offer the power behind them. You know, I've used this for podcasting. I've used this for worship for some organizations.
I think you're converting me to digital.
I am
think we're
converting
gonna
you to digital.
cancel that other mixer.
should
I'm
cancel
being
that
dead
other
I'll say
serious.
this: I like the Zoom one a little more because bringing an iPad is one thing we're definitely gonna forget.
Yeah, or we'll
I would
mess up.
recommend not doing that. Yeah. So, but yeah. But I know you had one
I
more
like
question,
this,
I believe,
though.
right?
No, yeah. Just to wrap everything up, because I think if you're watching this and you're in the live streaming space, I'm assuming, pretty much. I guess maybe if you could give some tips on how to just have better live stream audio or like a live mix for viewers and things, and
Sure.
if you just had any like last tips that you could give people so they could ultimately have better audio, or some quick easy fixes. It's like, hey, you might be doing this, just change that, and
Yeah.
you're golden. It's probably not that easy.
I would
but-
say the first thing is to make sure that your audio mix coming out of your console or device has a lot or a good amount of juice behind it. Okay? The reason I say that is because if you're running analog, you're automatically losing something in the system. If you're running digital, the closest to zero that you get, the better. But a lot of times, depending on the device that you're encoding with, like our BoxCaster or our BoxCaster Pro, maybe it's going to be something else, right? Maybe an AJ Hilo, whatever,
Yeah.
Epithan, whatever, okay?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all going to have different levels of ingest quality on audio. So if you pump enough signal in, you know that you'll have enough signal to work with,
Right.
okay? If you're on the flip side, you're like, well, I'm not getting enough signal in, okay, and everything seems to be low, then I would definitely take a look at the gain structure system and make sure that you're gaining into your console exactly what's needing to come out.
Right.
And always remember that on any console, if you're putting enough in, minor changes to the system are going to have large effect. So if you're pumping a ton into the gain and you're mixing it well, that a minor adjustment of 1, 2, 3, even 4 dB can have a huge effect on the back end.
Got it.
And it will be a little harder. The last tip I would say is make sure you leave enough headroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you need to increase the audio or you need to increase the signal in some way, shape, or form, even if it's a gain adjustment, make sure you have enough headroom so that way the system can handle that.
Right.
And whatever
Otherwise-
device you're coming to.
Otherwise, you end up with decapitation, also known as clipping.
Yeah,
I'm still scarred.
you're still starting, buddy. I would also recommend that there are a lot of resources out there. Like MXU is a great resource for learning how to mix, how to build a good mix. Dave Brashler off of YouTube, he actually helped work with Behringer on the X32. Churchfront with Jake Gosling. Those guys all have really good production setups, and they have really good tutorials and knowledge bases on how to do these things and do them properly. So I
Mhm.
would highly recommend looking into something like that. If you're not quite familiar or don't quite understand audio enough, these guys can help you work through that to give you a better idea as to what to do. And that's and quite honestly, outside of college, where I have my audio engineering or audio reinforcement certificates, I've used them to kind of help gain better
I
understanding.
feel like with most things, and again with live stream, you're gonna have to do a little bit of work, a little bit of research to
You will.
understand what's
Yeah.
going on.
well, it's
but
just
those,
like cameras.
And it's
Yeah.
always changing.
yeah,
so-
but those sound like some great resources. Like, hey, if you want to just not dip your toes in, but you want to fully dive in and learn more, go check out those YouTube channels and stuff.
Yeah.
And we'll put them on the screen. I mean, they'll be on the screen and stuff.
And if you're
so
looking for some better audio tips, check out BoxCast YouTube channel. We have
Yes.
the
we have the
Mhm.
audio webinar.
the audio webinar, which will help you.
Yeah.
And we're always answering questions from that all the time. So
that one's a little more visual too.
Yep.
It goes into EQs.
and you get to
different
see the
things.
console in play because I actually use
Yeah,
that.
Oh,
that
yeah.
helps. That's
Oh, yeah.
that was really helpful to watch you do that. I have a dumb guy's piece of advice for a live streamer if they
Oh, yeah.
ever want to. The best piece of advice I can give. We do this all the time. Check your live stream audio before you go live at its
Right.
highest volume on a device that someone might be watching on,
like a phone.
like a laptop, a
Yeah.
phone.
Phones are notorious for having low audio.
Yeah. Anything like that. Check it and just see if the average viewer can hear it. I always start at the endpoint. I know, like, you're an audio guy.
No,
so
you
you're
should
like,
too. I know you totally should
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
start
absolutely.
at the endpoint and I'm like, can someone at home hear this?
yeah.
And if
or
not, BoxCast has a really cool audio control feature. Where
Yes.
you can adjust gain and raise it up.
If
in
you're
our
using the
cloud.
Boxcaster,
Yeah, if you're using the BoxCaster, you can just
yeah, you can
raise
do it in the
levels.
cloud. You can do it in the settings. And I would say this on mostly all of our gigs, I'll step out of the room
That's what I'm saying.
2 to 4 times throughout the production, especially right at the beginning within the first couple minutes.
pop
and
some
I'm-
AirPods in.
And I'm just like, let me make sure I can hear this
Yep.
on my phone. And most of the time we can, but if it's like, hey, it's kind of low, I can immediately go back to my, wireless intercom system and say, Josh, turn this up
pop it up.
Yeah.
just a little bit.
No,
So-
that's fantastic. Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
dumb video guys litmus test.
Yes.
You guys should change your company's name to that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, well,
Yeah,
this
well,
is
thank you, Gary. We
Yeah,
really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it. We learned a lot. We were just asking you questions that we were like, well, wait, I need to know that. I need to know that. So we really appreciate it.
It's all good. Well, guys, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate the fact that you guys think I'm an expert. So,
Oh no,
but
I'm
yeah.
much more of an expert than us, and we really appreciate you explaining that and answering our what I would call dumb questions, I guess.
Or the dumb video
Dumb
guys
video
question.
guy questions.
Yes.
Yeah, right. That's a new business for you guys. So,
Yeah.
right.
Well, this has been the BoxCast podcast. We're great. It's been good to have you watch and listen to us. Please subscribe to any of our podcasting channels through Apple, Google, iHeart, Spotify. Click the bell, like and subscribe here on YouTube. where you have more content coming your way. I am Gary for BoxCast.
Yeah, and I'm Wade from BoxCast.
And I'm Josh, and I'm not going to clip to end it. I know you want me to.
Yeah, it's been great having you. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.